to the Wicked Webs We Weave podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Mckern. Join us weekly for tales of cursed media, haunted web series, ARGs, creepypastas, unfiction, and all things horror. Sit back, dim the lights, and welcome to the Wicked Webs We Weave. Welcome back, my friends. This week we go back to the big top, back to the show. I hope you still have your carnival smiles, your tickets to the Hall of Mirrors, the Funhouse Maze, the Haunted Dark Rides, and of course the Sideshow Attractions, which brings us to our first story. The Lobster Boy Grady Stiles, from circus, sideshow to murderer. A peculiar condition called ectrodactyly has afflicted the Stiles family for more than a century. The rare congenial condition causes the middle fingers of someone's hands to either be missing or fused to their thumb and pinky, giving the appearance of a lobster claw. As far back as the 1800s, the family grew and produced more children with unusual hands and feet. They would then develop a circus called the Lobster family, which became a carnival staple throughout the 20th century. But one son, Grady Stiles Jr., would cast a morbid shadow of the family name when he would turn from Sideshow Attraction to a serial abuser and murderer. Grady Stiles Jr., who would be known as Lobster Boy, was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1937. Grady Stiles Jr.'s ectrodactyly case was severe, as it also was in his feet, making him unable to walk. Grady would move around from the strength of his upper body and wheelchair, which would then prove to be a detriment to his future wife and children. Although the Stiles made a decent monetary gain as a family circus, Grady, now under the stage name Lobster Boy, would be the subject of constant ridicule and harassment, after years of which would result to a deep-seated hatred and abuse of alcohol to cope. Stiles Jr. grew up in the carnival, so it would be to no surprise that he would fall in love and marry another carnival worker, a young woman named Maria. Some sources say her name was Mary, last name Teresa, who had run away to join the circus as a teenager. The couple would marry and have 3 children, 2 of which possessed the same deformations as their father. He would later induct the 2 into the circus, to be billed as the Lobster family, like his ancestors before him. Unfortunately, the wife and their children would be subject to Sides' belligerent and abusive behavior. Neighbors would account hearing screams from the Stiles home. Allegedly, Stiles at one point used his claw-like hand to rip his wife's IUD from within her body during a fight, and would use his hands to choke her. It was no secret that Grady was violent towards his entire family, beating his daughter, Kathy, who was pregnant, so badly that she went into early labor. The child survived, and also had the Stiles deformity, ectrodactyly. Stiles' teenage daughter, Donna, fell in love with a man that Grady did not approve of. The young man, whose name was Jack Lane, had no idea his fate would be sealed on the eve before his wedding day. Grady would threaten his daughter Donna with murdering Jack if she chose to marry him. And on that fateful eve, he shot Jack with his shotgun. Grady was arrested and put on trial, but pleaded not guilty, stating he shot Jack in the back and out of self-defense. Grady also stated that no jail or prison was equipped to hold a man of his physical condition, that it would be cruel and unjust to do so. At this time, Grady had poor health due to excessive drinking and smoking. The defense in the court played to the jury of his past rehabilitation and unsavory carnival treatments. Grady would be set free with 15 years of probation. Lobster Boy by this time had been divorced and remarried another woman, had 2 more children. He proceeded to subject them to his drunken rampage, and eventually his second wife divorced him as well. For reasons unknown, his first wife would remarry Grady in 1989. A few years after remarrying Lobster Boy Grady Stiles, Mary would pay the next-door neighbor, a 17-year-old Chris Wyatt, $1,500 to kill Grady Stiles. Her son Glenn, which she had in a previous marriage, helped her conceive the plot to murder Lobster Boy. One night, Wyatt took a Colt .32 automatic into Stiles' trailer and shot him dead at point-blank range. During questioning and trial, not one of them denied having intended to kill Grady Stiles. In court, Mary would state, "My husband was going to kill my family. I believe that from the bottom of my heart." Daughter Kathy would also testify against her father. The jury convicted Wyatt of second-degree murder and sentenced him to 27 years in prison. They charged Grady's wife and her son Glenn with first-degree murder. She received a sentence of 12 years in prison. She began to serve her sentence in February of 1997. Glenn refused a plea and received life in prison. Lobster Boy was laid to rest, according to the funeral home. They weren't able to find anyone willing to be his pallbearers at his funeral. Special thanks to ATII.com and bailsbondsnow.org as I use them for research in this story. The Hartford, Conneticut Circus Fire. Over 70 years ago, on a Thursday, July 6, 1944, among the miserable heat, on a day like any other in Connecticut, a field on Harbor Street, between 6,000 and 8,000 patrons showed up to have fun and beat the heat of the summer at the Ringling Brothers Beaumont Bailey performance, a circus and matinee show featuring trapeze artists, clowns, and animal trainers. All the spectacle and viewing took place inside a roughly 500-foot big-top tent, which unfortunately would set the stage for one of the worst disasters in Connecticut and circus history. Following the performance by the French lion tamer Alfred Court, trapeze artists the Great Wallendas took their positions at the big top and began their routine. Meanwhile, just outside the tent, as theorized, a lit cigarette was tossed near the partition to the men's lavatories and started a small fire. The fire would be claimed to have been set by a circus employee, but who would later deny the claims in the 1990s. As the matinee continued, the fire made contact with the tent canvas and rapidly spread, due largely to the waterproofing on the canvas, which included the application of paraffin wax thinned with gasoline. One of the performers noticed the fire and screamed, "The tent's on fire!" The circus band leader, Merle Evans, quickly had his musicians break into the song "Stars and Stripes Forever," a musical signal to circus employees and cue that something was wrong. With the flames now reaching 100 feet high, panicked patrons dashed for the exits, only to find several of them blocked by animal cages, which were in process of being moved in and out of the tent for the show. Bottlenecks of crowds began forming at the remaining exits as the fire scorched. Burning patches of canvas began raining down on the circus attendees. Those unable to reach the exits quick enough began cutting holes in the tent canvas to escape. Ushers and other circus personnel ran toward the flames with buckets of water, but they were too late. In less than 10 minutes, the fire burned through poles and support beams and the ropes of the tent, sending what was left of the 19-ton big top crashing down on those who were unable to escape. By the time firefighters put out the flames, nearly 170 people lay dead. Most died from exposure to the fire and smoke, but also a significant amount were also trampled. Perhaps the most famous of the victims of the fire was a little girl without a name, known as Little Miss 1565, a name derived from the number assigned to her at the city morgue. Debate about her identity remains to this day. Authorities deemed the fire a terrible accident and never charged anyone. Ringling Brothers were not exonerated, however. 4 men faced charges for acts of negligence. Cited among these acts was a lack of fire preparation on the part of the circus management. An investigation in the blaze would reveal that the circus fire extinguishers were packed away, inaccessible, as they were in a storage unit. Their fire trucks rested more than a quarter of a mile away. The circus was also charged with failing to notify the Hartford, Conneticut Fire Department of their arrival and intention to perform. In the end, 4 circus officials pleaded no contest to the charges and spent approximately 1 year in prison before eventually receiving pardons. The circus agreed to pay $5 million in compensation to the families of the victims. And as a result of the Hartford, Connecticut circus fire of 1944, Connecticut enacted new strict fire safety regulations for public performance. A memorial was erected at the sites of the circus fire behind the Wish School in 2005. The center plaque is situated exactly where the big top was and has the names of all the victims, most of which were children. Want to thank ConnecticutInsider.com, that's ctinsider.com, and ConnecticutHistory.org for all their information and the research of preparing this episode. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I am your host, Ryan Mckern, and until we meet again, au revoir.